Okay, so on behalf of the Columbus Karma Takes of Choling, this is Lama Kathy saying hi. And this is our next iteration of our classes on meditation instruction. The mission of this class, of these classes that we've been having, has been to introduce all of you at the Athens KTC to what it means to share Dharma with other people, because part of any thriving community is building the skill and the capacity to share Dharma with other people. And we may not all be like what we might not think of ourselves as being teacher material. We might not think of ourselves as being of teacher material, but what we can do is we can share a little bit of Dharma with someone who's new and help them feel more welcome in our community and more a part of our community, because we are caring for them by sharing with them. And so that's kind of why I wanted to offer these, so that everybody could hear these instructions. Everyone can understand some of the instruction, and maybe at some point in the future, you might wish to formally train as a meditation instructor. These are just overviews that I'm giving, but I wanted you to have them so that you could think about if this is something you'd like to volunteer for and something you'd like to do. I was thinking at first we might do a formal training, but I said, nah, let's just start with an informal conversation. And so in order to start, I'm going to take some notes. If any of you have things that are challenging for you in the practice of quiet sitting meditation, if you have any personal challenges in quiet sitting meditation, let me know what they are and I'll write them down and make sure that we cover them in the instructive process today. You can unmute yourself or put them in chat.
Lama Kathy?
Yes.
For me, it's the challenge for me is how it changes, which is sort of a lesson in impermanence, right? Like the paint, it changes.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm confronting the thought of not expecting continual progress.
Okay. Right. I think that's really important. I think that's really important because I talk to a lot of people who are new to meditation, and a lot of them tell me, oh, I'm not good at meditation. And then I say, okay, well, that's an interesting place to start from. Let's examine that a bit. Let's find out, what is it precisely that gives you trouble? What is it precisely that's difficult? And then when I ask them, then they'll give me like examples like you just gave, which is of the idea of that meditation practice, even for the same individual, will change and be an up and down process, and how to set our expectations as students of meditation. How do we set our own expectations? How do we set the expectations of other students of meditation for how they will progress and what progression will look like? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
For example, I guess I didn't go into an example. Right now, I'm very distracted with my meditation. I've noticed a lot of days. Okay. And much more than I have been in, let's say, the last year.
Okay.
And so, I'm recognizing that this week and thinking about that it's not a race, it's not an achievement, it just is what it is right now.
Got it. Right. It's this is all really good. This is good. I really appreciate you sharing this, Patricia, because this is the kind of thing that we are going to gradually be able to help other people with, right? Mm-hmm. Because somebody brings a challenge to us, and then we say, well, here's my experience with that, and so on. And the more information we can give each other about meditation, and I can share from what I've learned about it, having taught it for the last 20 something years, then that's going to help you in your own personal practice as well as other people who you talk to in the future. So yeah, I've made notes of that, and I'll address that in a few minutes.
Kind of a little along the same theme is every now in my meditation, I will encounter thoughts or feelings that are especially persistent. So for instance, you know, like I have some friends that I'm worried about, you know, and I just can't quite just say, oh, let it go. And the, or, you know, some project that I'm working on that the thoughts sort of keep coming back to. So I was sort of curious, is there a way of, or a technique for sort of relieving oneself of persistent thoughts, you know, things that just don't vanish, that they just sort of keep coming back, even if they seem to vanish for a minute, then you know, it's like, you know, the water coming in. It just keeps coming in.
I hear this, and I have a couple of things to share about that. Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche spoke about it, and Mingyur Rinpoche spoke about it in lectures that I've attended. And so these two, they represent two different approaches to the persistent and intrusive thoughts. It's really interesting to me. Thank you for sharing that, because this is actually a frequent question for us as meditation instructors, because it's a frequent challenge for people who meditate. Just as Patricia was sharing that she's had some difficult times lately with her practice, you know, maybe a little bit more disruption and things like this. And so you're sharing the idea of persistent thinking. These are two really common things that people share with us. So I've got them written down, and I will definitely address those in my presentation. Anybody else? And if either of you, I mean, I know you've already shared, but if you have any other things that come to mind.
For me, I get into this habit sometimes of laziness, what I think of as laziness. And
Tell me more about that.
That is just like letting it flow, letting the thoughts flow.
Got it.
I like look at my mind. I have this tendency, I think, to look at my mind as sort of a game and to keep myself interested. And I just let myself think about whatever I feel like thinking about. And I can do that for a couple of days. And then finally I go, whoa, wait a minute. Hold on here. What?
Got it.
I'm not really meditating.
Yeah. How to reel that back in, right? Yeah. Got it. Oh, we're going to have so much fun. I feel it. I feel it coming. We're going to have fun today. Okay, great. Any other things that folks would like to share? I have to tell you, Patricia, I'm making little notes, and everybody, I'm making little notes on my notebook down here. And I wrote laziness, letting thoughts flow. And then part 2, gamification.
Right.
You know, this is what they talk about on, on internet platforms and apps, you know, that if you gamify something or make it into a game, people are more engaged. But like, is that a good thing to do with meditation or not? And then we'll answer that question. Okay. Other things that people might want to know. Okay.
Here's another one.
Okay.
I use the technique for going to sleep at night.
Okay.
The technique of letting thoughts go. And because in the past, I've had trouble with insomnia.
Okay.
Especially at the beginning of sleep. So I think, well, I should just practice letting thoughts go. And it works really well for me. Is that a problem to use it that way?
No, it's not a problem to use it that way,
Okay.
but I may need to make an adjustment in it,
Mhm.
an adjustment in how you practice it, because that might actually help. Okay,
Mhm.
so there's a couple of adjustments that can be made to that practice, and
Mhm.
that will make it a little, it'll make it a little more transferable to other situations.
Okay.
Okay,
Mhm.
yeah, so I can do that. Other stuff. Going once, going twice.
Um, just, I don't know, maybe briefly, just the importance of posture.
Okay.
Um,
Mhm.
the the reason I ask is that I can't do the traditional kneeling type thing.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so I've been doing, as best I can with the sitting type thing, but
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
just are there any sort of like, what are the key points? Like if you have to fake it,
Yeah.
what do you remain true to, and what do you say? Well, yeah, I can let that one slide.
No, I hear you on that. Okay, yeah, sure. Okay. Anything, any more? Okay. Well, I feel like we've got a really good list here, and this is going to really help us with how we structure things today. What I'd like to do at the beginning here is I'm going to recite a short prayer in English to start the class portion. And this is just basically calling together our intention, our pure intention in learning this material today, and calling on the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha to be our friends, helpers, and witnesses. This is the 4-line refuge prayer. In the Buddha, his teaching, and the order most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. Through the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may we attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, his teaching, and the order most excellent, we take refuge until enlightenment is reached. Through the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may we attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, his teaching, and the order most excellent, we take refuge until enlightenment is reached. Through the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may we attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Okay. Oh, and then I have to say a little prayer too. Oh, Palden Sawe Lama Rinpoche, Dagi Chi Warpe de Denshudla, Kadran Jembokone Jesунte, Kusun Tuking Udrup Saldu So. And that is Master seated above the crown of my head. And may I have the blessings of your body, speech, and mind. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by I'm looking at my class materials here. I'm going to look and see if we have a posture overview for you here, because I think that would be super helpful if we could do that. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, there. Let's see what we've got here. Let's do. Okay. No, that's not what I was looking for. Okay. Well, that was not it. Okay. Let's go back to my list of things. Intro to meditation. Let's look at this. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know how that ended up. I have something that ended up in the wrong place. Okay, well, we'll just start there. I'm going to share screen and show you, we'll start with the objectives for the class. I'm going to try and spread these out so you can see them better. Meditation instruction. The overall objection is to orient students to tranquility meditation. Well, I guess that's not going to work. And give instruction and experience in practicing tranquility meditation as taught by Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche. So that is our overall objective, is to orient students to a tranquility meditation as it's taught at the KTC, and give instruction and so forth as taught by Rinpoche, Khenpo Rinpoche. And if you want to know where to find these instructions, you can find them in his 2 books. Khenpo Rinpoche gives very detailed shamatha instructions in his book Dharma Paths, DharmaPaths, Dharma Paths. It's in the chapter on taming the mind. And then he also gives detailed instructions in his book Excellent at the Beginning. Excellent at the Beginning. And he teaches the step-by-step practice of shamatha meditation in the chapter on shamatha, or calm abiding. The word shamatha is based on the Sanskrit word for calm abiding. Calm abiding. So whether we talk about shamatha, or maybe we'll talk about the Tibetan word for the same practice, which is Sheena, Shinay. Sheena or shamatha both mean the same thing. They mean calm abiding. So we talked about calm abiding sometimes by using the word tranquility meditation. So that is sometimes how we refer to calm abiding or shamatha, as tranquility meditation. So the first of the detailed objectives is to briefly introduce Columbus KTC as a place where meditation is taught and practiced. And then we also introduce the Buddhist view underlying meditation practice. And that underlying view of meditation practice is to recognize that our mind determines our experience. That's the first thing to share with a person who's learning meditation. Our mind determines our experience, because the Buddha said, we are what we think. And with our thoughts, we make the world. We are what we think, and with our thoughts, we make the world. So a lot of us experience our minds as a cascade of thoughts, one after the other. And the practice of meditation aims to slow that pace down by allowing us to put our attention on the simple act of breathing. And by placing our attention on the simple act of breathing, and then returning our attention to the breath over and over and over again, by just doing this simple attention exercise, we slow down the torrent of thought and allow the mind to have some rest and stability. And that's basically the Buddhist view that underlies meditation practice. We are what we think, and therefore we need to work with our minds if we want to work with our experience. Second, that right now our thoughts are rushing constantly, and that causes us pain and confusion. And so the third part is that by slowing this torrent of thinking, by slowing it down, we will experience more inner peace, stability, and rest. Does that make sense? I try to keep these things simple. And Patricia, later, when we go through the levels of practice and how practice proceeds and how practice is sort of an up and down proposition, we'll talk a little bit about how we need to reestablish this thread of attention and peace and rest. We'll get to that later. But this is really where that starts, is in the very first lesson, where we establish the view, which is that meditation is not falling asleep. It's not going into a trance. It's actually training our attention through training to being attentive to our breath. Any questions about this first detailed objective? Okay, The second is to present the instructions on physical posture and mental technique. And I'm going to come back to this in a minute because I have a handout that you can use to teach this from that details this, and this will help with the posture questions that Jeff asked earlier. And then third, we practice tranquility meditation together for just a few minutes after we've given them a basic instruction. We then discuss correct practice in further detail. In other words, answering their questions about their experience. And then we add a second layer of instructions. One of my experiences as being a frequent flyer before the pandemic is that I watched a number of airlines do the safety briefing before the takeoff of the plane. I saw the safety briefing given several different ways. And my favorite way was when they broke it into two parts. They actually gave some information, then stopped and allowed time to pass, and then gave the second part of it, which I thought was really interesting because I bet they must have studied it and found that people retained the information better when they broke it into pieces. So I thought that was pretty cool. And so that's what made me design these detailed objectives in this way, which is where we ask people to practice with, we give them basic instructions, we have them practice with us, then we get their questions and add an additional piece. And I'll tell you about that when we get there. Then we review the benefits of meditation. We explain how to practice at home and then invite questions and discussion. So that's a little bit about this. And I don't know that I have given this list of detailed objectives to everyone. I don't know that I've done that. So if I have not, I'll make sure that you get them. Here's the sort of some of the meditation instructors start with the four slogans that summarize the Eightfold Noble Path of the Buddha: do no harm, practice virtue, tame the mind. This is the teaching of the Buddha. And that meditation helps to support us in doing these three things. The posture is noted as 7 parts. We start from the bottom and work up. And so this is what helps me teach the posture, is I just say we build the posture from the bottom up. I don't teach drawing up because most people don't understand it. So, but I do teach an alternate to that. So here's what we're going to start with. We're going to start with the stable cross-legged posture. Now, I noticed, Jeff, you were saying that you have trouble doing that. And so since you have trouble doing that, there's an alternate way of teaching this for people who are sitting in chairs. And we always offer chairs in our meditation instruction room so that people can, if they feel comfortable sitting on the floor cross-legged, they can do that. But if they don't feel comfortable doing that, we actually have chairs in the meditation instruction room, so people don't have to feel embarrassed asking for a chair. They just sit in it. And everybody can make a guess as to how many chairs you will need, but we tended to have 5 or 6 chairs available. And we could roll them up closer as people needed. So the stable cross-legged posture has to do with basically building this posture from the bottom up. I would actually use my arms as an instruction tool. I say, let's pretend these are the hips and these are the knees and these are the ankles. You know, you can sit with this very simple cross-legged posture like we used when we were children, or you can sit in a yoga posture with one leg in front of the other or one on top of the other. And the real athletes can sit in what yoga calls the lotus posture. And Tibetan Buddhists call the same posture the Vajra posture. Left foot on right thigh, right foot on left thigh. This is very hard to do. And so we don't really recommend it to beginners, but if anybody wants to do it, that's how it's done. Left foot, right thigh, right foot, left thigh, like that. And so, but if you're sitting in a chair, the way you sit is with your feet flat on the floor. Your feet are flat on the floor and they are hip width apart. In other words, you can line up where your feet are with where your hips are. That way your feet aren't too close together or too far apart. It's more natural and stable. And that if you need to sit closer to the edge of the chair in order to have your feet flat on the floor, that's what you have to do. Any questions about posture point 1, stable cross-legged posture? Some people tell me that their ankles fall to sleep when they are sitting cross-legged on the floor. And what some people do to correct this is that they'll take a rolled up towel and they will put it under their knees to prop their knees up. And that's absolutely permitted. The second posture is called drawing up. Usually Khenpo Rinpoche talks about it in his descriptions as being one deep breath in which you tighten all of the lower muscles in your body, the leg muscles, the sphincter muscles, the rear end, everything. You just tighten all the muscles in the lower part of your body and then you relax them. And they do this in order to ground themselves on their seat. You can do this or teach this if you like, but not if you don't. Khenpo Rinpoche had an alternate way of talking about this in order to help people who are hearing it feel more comfortable. And he's basically said, you ground yourself on your seat by rocking gently from side to side and tucking in the muscles of the backside. And it accomplishes pretty much the same thing without having to talk about uncomfortable things. It's because some people feel embarrassed talking about the various muscles of the body and so on. But the idea is, in order to ground ourselves wherever we are, we can either talk about it as tightening all of the muscles and then relaxing them. That is the drawing up, tightening all the muscles momentarily and then relaxing them. Or you can do it by rocking gently and tucking in the muscles of the backside, which accomplish the same thing. Any questions about this part? Okay. Placing of the hands is the third part. And this is the same whether you're sitting on the floor or whether you're sitting in a chair. If you're sitting on the floor, you can place your hands palm downward on the tops of your legs. And if you're sitting in a chair, you can do exactly the same thing, placing them palm downward. Now, what I tell people is that there are 2 or 3 ways to sit in meditation with your hands. In yoga, in Hindu yoga, they often have people sit with their palms up. but that's not what we do in Buddhism. In Buddhism, we're about grounding a person. So we put our hands down to ground ourselves. And interestingly enough, this technique of putting the hands palm downward on the legs was used by the great Tibetan master Marpa. M as in Mary, A, R as in Richard, P as in Paul, A. Marpa was one of the great early practitioners of Mahamudra meditation, and he popularized this technique of placing the hands palm downward on the legs. The alternate that we see used is from the sutras, the Buddhist sutras, where the Buddha describes placing your left hand in your lap, in the center of your lap, with the left hand on the bottom, the right hand on the top with the thumbs touching. We see this also, but for many people, this is difficult because if they can't sit in the lotus posture, they have no place to put their hands, to rest their hands. And those cupped hands would be sitting on the cross place where your ankles cross each other. That's where your hands would sit. And so people try to artificially hold their hands up, at their stomach. And then this creates stress in the arms when the person is trying to artificially sit in sutra position without having their legs in sutra position, which is that lotus posture, right? So I tell people that since Marpa invented this posture, and many thousands of meditators have done this, we're good. We're good. So you can either sit in the sutra position or in the Marpa position. Either one is good. We don't really recommend the yoga posture because it's a little confusing to, because Hindu yoga, the purpose of Hindu yoga is different from what we're doing. Any questions about placement of the hands? I didn't know. I didn't know this Marpa business until like 2 years ago or 3 years ago. I didn't know that he invented that. I thought Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche invented it, but no. Trungpa got it from Marpa. And this was explained to us by the young meditation master Mingyur Rinpoche. Any questions about the hands?
Lama Kathy, sometimes I've seen people meditate with their hands curled.
Oh yeah, if you want to, you can add that. I tend not to because I think it confuses people, but at the very initial instruction, I tend not to teach that, but sometimes I do throw it in there so that they now have 3 methods to use, but sometimes it's too much information and they overload. Burp, 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 But Khenpo Rinpoche, and in fact, I'm really glad you mentioned this because he does bring it up in his instruction in Dharma Paths, where he says that you can also sit with a posture, a hands down on the lap, on the lap. They're still hands down on your legs, but how you, instead of having your fingers out straight, you place your thumb at the base or the first joint of your ring finger and then close your hand in a light fist. This is called making the paws of a lion, like, a lion's paws, P-A-W-S. And then you place them in exactly the same location on top of the legs.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out because I did forget that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay. Then the 4th position, see, you can see again, we're building this from the bottom up. Your legs, your seat, your seat, and then the shoulders, hands, arms, the straightening of the lower back. And I had a friend who's a martial arts teacher tell me how you can do, how you can make your back straight-ish, because your back can't be perfectly straight because it's got natural curves in it. I mean, you know, so it's like you can't make your back 100% straight. That's not possible. But this is what he said to do. He said that you should hunch your shoulders and round your spine so that you know that it's absolutely not straight. And then you should arch your back so that you know that that's a little too much. And then slowly relax the lower back and take some of that curve out until it feels comfy. In other words, you round your back and you know that's wrong, and you arch your back and you know that's wrong, but then you slowly take a little off of that arch, and then you feel comfortable after a certain time point and that a certain position. Does that make sense? You just, you curve the back and then arch the back and then take a little bit off that arch until you're comfy. What this does is it allows the breath to move well in the body. Any questions about the lower back? The fifth position is to pull in the chin a little bit. And I use the word tuck, like you tuck in something, you tuck your chin in just a little bit. And the way this can look is that you can, like, just the very outer part of your chin, you can just pull it in just a little bit, like you're making a double chin. Like you're making a double chin. And what that does is you can feel it right away. It straightens the neck vertebrae so that you're not like leaning your head over. Any questions about number 5? Okay, then I usually put these in different order now that I'm looking at how he's placed them. But anyway, I usually do the cross-legged posture, the drawing up, the lower back, the hands, the chin, the gaze, and the tongue. I do the tongue last, but anyway, here he puts it as number 6, that you rest the tongue on the tip of the tongue on the upper palate, the roof of your mouth, behind the front teeth. This is somewhat optional. A lot of people can't do this. And so I don't want people to think that it's like you absolutely have to do it. But what this does is when you do it, it relaxes the muscles of your face. A lot of people hold tension in their jaw, and this allows that tension to release. And then the 7th position is the gaze. The gaze can
One
be.
thing.
Sorry, Steve.
Oh yeah, this is Steve. Oh, just briefly, I thought of one thing they used to say in Austin at the Dharma Dhatu there that Rinpoche Trungpa started. But anyway, with the tongue, they said you could to leave your lips open just a little bit. So I guess that's part of that. I never knew why, but you just said it relaxed the jaws. Yeah.
Yeah, you just let it just be, let your sort of lower your mouth and so forth be natural. There are 2 ways that the tongue is placed. One is just to let it rest in the lower part of the mouth naturally, but then to let the mouth fall open a bit. I have an overbite, so mine will be a little different from other people's, but also touching the tongue also helps with this relaxation. And it also prevents a lot of swallowing, because some people get distracted by swallowing.
I was also just want to say I was happy to hear that about why we place our hands down instead of the yoga people place it up. But that grounding, I remember they used to talk about grounding a lot more, and reading Pema Children, she's always talking about stepping out in space. So it's like well, where does this ground? Okay, I got that now.
Yeah, well, and the spaciousness, really the idea of spaciousness is an added feature of the the Dharmadhatu method of talking about meditation, because it has to do with a little bit with the gaze, in that sometimes if we stare at a point, then we will over focus, and then we'll get a headache. And then, so allowing the gaze to be soft and gentle, and to look down, basically you cast your gaze downward a few feet ahead of you, and you're not like staring a hole in the carpet. You're allowing the gaze to gently expand. And that's how I heard Pema Chodron talk about it, like this gentle expansion of the gaze, so that you're taking in the whole picture, but you're not like detail noting everything. You're just gazing. You're not looking, you're gazing. Some people have so much
Very nice.
challenge in leaving their eyes open that they do have to close their eyes at first. The Situ Rinpoche said this is okay. You might fall asleep, but if that's the worst thing that happens, it's it's better than you feeling like really overexcited and overstimulated because your eyes are open. I solved that problem. I was one of those people, but instead of closing my eyes, I just took my glasses off, and then I couldn't see a thing anyway. So that was easy. That was an easy fix. And again, that gentleness of the gaze does open up spaciousness, a sense of spaciousness, because we don't want people to feel claustrophobia while they're sitting on the cushion, right? We don't want them to be like zeroed in. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, any questions? Go ahead.
I've always wondered about this. So you have the round cushion. I forget what, and then what about the bigger ones some people put under that?
Oh yeah, the zabuton. Yeah.
Cushions in general, I've never asked anyone what the various cushions or what is most comfortable, or do we not want to get too comfortable with cushions and stuff?
Yeah, and I really appreciate you asking that. When you're on a soft surface, for example, right now I'm sitting on a carpet. I'm sitting on a carpet. That's a soft surface for me.
Okay.
In fact, I'm sitting on 2 carpets. So I don't need a zabuton. Okay, but if you're sitting on a hard concrete or wood floor, you're going to want that 3-foot square zabuton, the flat cushion, a base cushion. And we give them, we are using the names that are given to them in the Japanese Zen tradition. Zabuton. I don't know what that large square cushion is called in Tibetan Buddhism. I can't help you with that. But we also can use a cushion for our backside, and that and sometimes in some places they use the round Japanese cushion called a zafu, Z-A-F-U. And then other people will use other forms of cushion under their backside to lift their backside up off of the floor. My teacher told me the ideal size of your cushion for your backside is like 4 finger widths, and that's your fingers. But most of us didn't learn sitting on the floor and don't do a lot of sitting on the floor. So we might have to double it because our legs won't work. We can't fold our legs and sit on the floor like that on a cushion that low. We may have to have a taller cushion. Does that help?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Other questions about these 7 postures? Okay. So, so what Kempo Karthar Rinpoche says is that you place your body in this posture, working from the bottom to the top. And then you just allow your body to sit in that posture for a short time, just feeling the feeling of being in it. And he says it's like harmonious. It has a harmonious feeling. At first, it will be a little uncomfortable and artificial, but it will be have a feeling of balance. Now, I've just noticed that it's 2 o'clock, and I'd like to give you a 5-minute break. I'm sorry to interrupt the instruction for this break, but I think it will help everybody's brain if we can take 5 minutes away and then come back. And then we'll talk about the technique, okay? Okay, so I'm going to turn off the recording. All right. Thank you. So we'll go back to the outline. Now that we've established the posture, by the way, does this help address any of your questions, Jeff, that you had on posture?
Yes, the one of the things that I have been confused about in assorted readings was where my hands should go, whether they should be curled, whether they should be flat, whether they should, because they all seem to be from good authorities.
Well, yeah, right.
And yeah, just yeah, sort of the review of the purpose of things, so that so yeah, it seemed like the effect that you're trying to achieve. So yeah, I think that could sort of, that helps things. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, that's good. That was what I was hoping, because I'm going to be getting to Patricia's questions here in a minute, but I did want to go over the posture part, since that was your question. So we're good then?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. And something else I can say about posture, and that is that when I was first learning, Kempo Karthar Rinpoche said, look, not everybody can do all these points of posture. Not everybody can do it. He said, don't give yourself a hard time if you have difficulty doing these. He said, it's really about comfort at first. We have to be able to establish a habit of meditating, and sometimes the strictness of a posture will keep people from meditating. For example, I have people come to me all the time saying, I can't sit like that. Is it okay if I lie down to meditate? And the answer is, well, sure, it's actually fine. And in fact, in the yoga tradition, there's a time-honored tradition of meditating in what's called the corpse pose, with people laying flat on their backs, and it's with cushion under the neck and the lower back and knees, but the idea is that there is that tradition in yoga. So but of course we do have to recognize we might fall asleep, but once again, that's, as Sitra Rinpoche said, that's not the worst thing that could happen to you, is to be so relaxed that you're asleep. He said, don't worry too much about it.
I had read some instructions. Oops, I'm muted. Oh no, I'm not muted. I had read some instructions, about laying on the left side and so on and so forth. It seemed like there were a variety of, this is not my need at the time, so we don't need to talk about it, but I was amazed at the sort of variety of strict instructions as to positions one could assume.
Yeah, I haven't heard left or right sided postures given for meditation, so that's a new one for me. But I do appreciate you sharing about that, and yeah, there is no real tradition that I have learned from my Tibetan teachers of meditating lying down, but that doesn't mean it can't be done, because the yoga folks show that it can be done. So I think that people shouldn't give themselves a hard time.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think these instructions were meant for if you can't sit in a chair, da da da. You know, I mean, okay, so this is Plan D, okay, and
Yeah,
here's Plan
exactly.
E. And, so
That's right. Okay. Anything
the
else?
point was
Any
to
other?
meditate.
Right, exactly. Any other questions about the posture part?
So if you were teaching, would you would do it in this order then? Teach the posture before the breathing?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No question. Because Khenpo Rinpoche says something in one of his books, and I forget whether it's Dharma Paths or Excellent at the beginning, where he said that establishing the posture is like establishing like the atmosphere in which you will attend to your breath. And if you don't have proper posture, how will you know how to attend to your breath? So yeah, so he kind of puts them in order for that reason.
Okay.
Posture first and then the technique. Anything else? Okay, then we'll go on to technique here. When I teach this, this handout here, this is not according to the way I teach it, but I teach technique in two parts. I say there's the mental technique and the physical technique. The mental technique is starting with an intention. And the intention is, may I follow the methods of meditation for the next few minutes for the benefit of all, of myself and all beings. In other words, you set a positive intention. That's the mental technique, setting a positive intention. But then the physical technique is Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche taught this, and I don't think it's in either Dharma Paths or in Excellent at the beginning. But he taught, when he did an oral teaching for us on meditation, he taught us to start with a physical technique of taking one deep breath at the beginning. One deep breath through the nostrils, if possible, and through your mouth if you're congested, taking one deep breath, letting the breath fall deep into your torso, and then breathing out. And having this one deep breath be a form of centering you. You start with one centering breath, deep breath, and then let it out. And then allow your attention to come to rest on the breath. You'll notice that I do not use the word focus. This is intentional. There are two words I never use. One is focus and the other is concentrate. I never use those words. And the reason I don't is because words are so powerful. And that when you tell someone to focus, they will focus. They'll kind of knit their brows and crunch up their face like, oh, I've got to really focus. And it's the same thing with the word concentrate. They'll over apply themselves. And this is not what we want. So what we want to encourage is a gentler touch. So the words we use are place your attention on the breath. Place your attention on the breath. And you can follow the breath in a couple different ways. Some people like to follow the breath all the way in, feel it inflate the lungs and feel it leave and go out into space. But other people prefer to only be aware of the soft sensation of the breath coming and going right at the nostrils. So whichever of these two you prefer, just pick one. You try one and then see how that works. You follow the breath in, follow the breath out, and then you count. And as this person is saying, you count on the exhale. So in breath, out breath, mentally count 1. In breath, out breath, mentally count 2, and so on. And that this is the sort of the physical technique. You have the mental technique of your intention, and then the physical technique of following the breath in, out, and then counting. Now, some people don't like counting, and it's okay not to count. Some people find it helpful, but other people, it makes them crazy. They just don't want to do it. And so, let your own thoughts about it be your guide on it, So then what I might do is, before we get to this third technique, I might actually ask people to sit and do these first two with me. Let's just, and then I'll say, hey, before we get to the third technique, let's just do this a little bit. Setting your mental intention to benefit beings, and then taking the one deep breath, letting it out, and then placing the attention on the breath as it comes and goes. And then I literally do it for like 1, 2, 3 minutes. And then after that, if I'm using a little meditation gong, I'll ring the gong, or I'll just say that was a short rehearsal, for meditation. And Michael is asking, is there a reason not to count inhale 1, exhale 2, inhale 3? Oh, camera and mic are not working today. Yeah, okay. It wasn't how I was taught, but if you want to do that, you can. Some people might think that's a lot. 1, 2, 3. I don't know. So I'm going to leave that up to you if you want to teach it that way. It's not the way I learned it. And that's really the only reason. It's just not the way I learned it. That doesn't mean it's wrong to teach it like that. Inhale 1, exhale 2, inhale 3, exhale 4. I mean, you could do that too. It's just a lot of numbers,
Well, Lama Kathy, I just have a couple comments. One is, well, to me, it's physiologically a breath, both the inhale and the exhale, right? So it makes sense. Physiologically, the breath is considered, there's 2 parts to the breath, an inhale and an exhale. So science-wise, it makes sense to me. But also, do you ever address at this point, you're following the breath, you're really just following the breath rather than making the breath? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes. No, I don't differentiate, because I don't, unless somebody asks about it, I don't differentiate, because I don't want to create like a dichotomy in people's minds if I can help it. Because I already get a certain number of people who find this technique claustrophobic.
Okay.
That this technique makes them feel claustrophobic with their own breath. So I wait. I don't try to pre-program them that they're going to feel uncomfortable, I just, just place your attention on the breath as it comes and goes. And then after we do that for 1, 2, or 3 minutes, then I stop and I say, okay, how was that? And then often I will get people asking questions of one kind or another, but I won't try to front load a lot of info, because it's a lot. But I can understand your point that, that you want people to understand there are many ways of watching the breath. There's not just one way. Because your point is that you can watch the breath all the way in, all the way out, and another way?
No, what I'm saying is what I did at the beginning was that I didn't just follow my breath. I thought I'm going to breathe.
Oh yeah, no, you don't.
And then I thought I'm going to breathe out. And now I'm going to breathe in.
No,
you know, instead of letting it flow naturally, which believe it or not was really hard for me to do.
Right. Okay. Well, and if I would hear you ask that question, I'd say, well, sure, but we're not trying to control the breath.
Right.
Because Kemper Rinpoche said that on more than one occasion. This is not about controlling the breath. It is just being aware of what is happening. It's not that you're causing yourself to breathe. It's just that you're being present with the process of it. And following it all the way out and then following it all the way in might be the best way of approximating what you're saying, without it being like, okay, I'm going to force the air out now. And I'm going to bring that air in now. It's like we're trying our best not to control the breath. We're not trying to make it soft. We're not trying to make it harsh. We're just allowing it to be natural, whatever natural is. I don't know. Does that help?
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah. And based on what
Kathy?
I see people are asking lots of questions in the chat. So yes, go ahead and ask your question, Steve.
Okay, yeah, on the way that the gentler way than saying focus or concentrate on the breath. I like also sometimes to use, if it's okay, I want to ask, become aware of the breath or just notice the breath. Is that okay too?
Yeah, you can place your awareness on, you can notice the breath, but yes, you can use all of those words, as long as, I just don't want people to think they have to focus or concentrate. I just, because those words, when people hear them,
Right,
they
I
tend to
understand. So
overdo it.
place your attention.
Yeah.
Place your attention, become aware, or notice. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. Now we've got some questions in the chat. Let me.
Oh, another question I missed.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, please. Listening. I'm listening. Steve, I'm listening.
Oh, I'm sorry. For me, I'm sorry. Well, I got the very first on intention. I missed a couple of words. May I something about benefit all beings, doing something with the meditation. Can you give me that little phrase again, please?
Oh, sure. The mental. There's the the physical technique and the mental technique. The mental technique deals with forming your intention or establishing your intention.
Right.
I'm going to be meditating for the benefit of myself and others. Like I'm going to be doing, following or pursuing the technique of meditation for myself and others, something like that.
Okay. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. It's like you're setting yourself up to follow the technique for the next few minutes, and that you're going to do it for the benefit of not just yourself, but others. I hope that helps.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, great. So once again, I'm going to get to the other questions in just a moment, because now that I've had a chance to read them, I see that they're gonna follow naturally what I say next. So attention on the breath and count on the exhale. In breath, out breath, mentally count 1. In breath, out breath, mentally count 2. And yes, you can count your own way if you like. This was one of the questions in chat. Yes, you can count your own way if you like, but when you teach other people, it's better to keep it simple. And then what you'll notice when you do this, and remember, we've just spent 1 to 3 minutes with our new meditation students. Just now, we've just finished spending 1 to 2 minutes just doing attention on the breath and counting on the exhale. We've done nothing else. That's all we've done. We haven't talked about why certain numbers are used. I don't even tell people what numbers are traditional. I just say, here, just, in breath, out breath, count 1. Now, if you want to use a number, you can say the Tibetan Buddhist traditional number is 7. Don't know why. No explanation. Sorry. I can't give you a logical explanation. But 7 is an easy number. You could just as easily pick 10. But traditionally in Tibetan Buddhism, the number is 7 or 21, which is 3 sevens. And so I honestly cannot tell you why 21. I cannot tell you why 7. I cannot tell you why not anything else. And you can do what you like, but in terms of teaching people, the traditional numbers are 7 and 21. And so then, although Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche said, of course, you can count to 100. It's up to you. You can do whatever you want, but the idea of having a simple number is so that it is easier to return to it if you wander from it. Using a simple number like 1 to 10 or 1 to 7 is quite easy to return to it. If you lose your place, you can just go back to 1. Whereas if you were trying to compete against yourself by picking a big number and trying to get to it, then you've kind of lost your intention of doing this practice for the benefit of yourself and others and turned it into a bit of a game, So your intention, you have to try to hold that intention, that intention, and that it's very simple activity. But what you noticed in that 1 to 3 minutes that we were meditating together, only being attentive to the breath and counting, what you might have noticed is that you started with a short period of attention. You were maybe able to be attentive to the breath for a couple of breaths. But then after you were able to be attentive to your breath for a couple of breaths, then you might have wandered off a little bit. Maybe you wandered into the past, or maybe you wandered into the future. Maybe you started thinking, am I doing this right? Which is the present, right? So what you noticed about this 1 to 3 minute period of meditation we just did together, new student and us, is that you had a short period of attention that was followed by a period of wandering, mental wandering. That is the next technique we're going to talk about, is this technique number 3, what to do when you wander. Because guess what? You're going to wander. Wandering is going to happen because that's the way the mind is. You place your attention, it stays there for a short time, but then you have a period of wandering. Our job as meditators is to notice the wandering. That's the first part. We have to notice the wandering and return our attention to the breath for a fresh start. Notice the wandering, return the attention to the breath for a fresh start. And so what you can do, how you can do this, is that once you notice that you are no longer being attentive to the breath, you stop. You can even label what has happened to you as thinking, and then you let go of the thing that has distracted you and purposefully turn your attention back to the breath. And think that this is a fresh start for you. Don't think, oh, I made a mistake, because that's not it. We know that there will be a short period of attention, and we know it will be followed by wandering. So our job is to notice the wandering and then return. Notice and return, notice and return. And we do this over and over again. No matter how many times we have to do it, we always notice and return, notice and return. And what you get when you notice and return is you get stronger. It's like physical exercise. Physical exercise doesn't consist of holding your hands or your legs or whatever in a single motion and then doing nothing. That's not exercise. Exercise is doing a motion and then doing another motion that puts a little bit of stress on the muscles. And that little bit of stress of doing a repetitive thing is what makes the muscles stronger. So what you've done with your attention is you've placed it and it stays there, but then it wanders, and then bringing it back from the wandering is actually the strengthening part. That's what strengthens your capacity to cultivate attention. So some people think the wandering is a mistake, but it's not a mistake. It's what's happening. And our job is to notice the wandering and return, notice and return. And in this way, that's like the power moment. The moment that makes meditation really powerful is the noticing, the labeling, the discarding, and the returning. That's what really makes our meditation stronger and stronger. Now, some people might misunderstand this instruction and think, oh, well, then I have to make lots of distractions. No, it's not like that. Again, you're not trying to control what pops up in your mind, just like you're not trying to control your breath. You just allow your attention to rest on the breath. And then if that attention wanders, then you deal with it. You don't try to create distractions so that you can get stronger. It's not like that. Does that make sense? Questions about that? So this then, since there's no questions about it, then I think maybe the thing to do would be then to address the two issues that you brought up at the beginning, which is the issue of persistent thoughts and feelings, and then the difference between observing the breath and letting thoughts flow. And so we'll address those two things, since you don't have, like, beginning meditator questions, example questions that you might get. So persistent thoughts and feelings. Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche and Mingyur Rinpoche have both addressed this, and they addressed it in completely different ways. So this gives us a couple different ways to think about them. Khenpo Rinpoche addressed it from the point of view of what might be happening inside our mind and why specific thoughts might come again and again. Mingyur Rinpoche basically said, you use the persistent thought, you change the object of your attention to the persistent thought. That's his way of dealing with it. So let me explain these in detail. Khenpo Rinpoche said that when thoughts return again and again, he said he says he believes that there's a reason for this. And he said the reason is very similar to the reason why people get songs stuck in their heads. He said it's very similar because he had heard people explain to him the whole phenomena of the earworm, which is a song that gets stuck in your head. He said, part of you knows that the thought, persistent thought, is not helpful. Part of you knows it, but another part of you really wants it. So part of you doesn't want that thought, but part of you really wants that thought because it gives you some kind of comfort. And so as a result, he said, you're kind of divided against yourself because part of you wants the thought, part of you doesn't want the thought. So his idea was that when this happens, when you have persistent thoughts, you don't fixate on the persistent thought as being a problem. Don't say, oh, I'm being tortured by this persistent thought. He said, you don't form a secondary story about the thought. You just keep noticing it and discarding it and noticing it and discarding it and noticing it and discarding it. And at some point, you might just say, okay, enough, and it won't return. But we do have to differentiate between this and the impact of organic brain chemistry disorder, which does make intrusive thoughts and hallucinations even part of a person's mental landscape. And so we have to differentiate between just a pesky thought that comes back and a hallucination or a truly intrusive thought that could be coming from an organic cause. And in that case, medical treatment is important to seek, but just for the pesky thoughts, like the songs that come back again and again, doing the technique is the preferred way of working with it, and doing one's best not to feel anything of frustration with it, just like there it is, and there it is again, and there it is again, and so forth, and to let go of any story we might have about that, which is additional baggage. Now you're going to love what Mingyur Rinpoche said. And this actually was a song. A meditator said, I got this song in my head. And I know you all want to know what it was, so I'll tell you. It was the theme song from the old television program, The Beverly Hillbillies. Yes, indeed, it was the Beverly Hillbillies song. And she said, it frustrates me. I can't meditate. Every time I sit to meditate, this song comes on. And Mingyur Rinpoche basically said, look, you've got like a gift handed to you just now by this. He said, so just take the song as the object of your meditation and just watch it. Just watch the song and watch the song and watch the song and watch the song and watch the song. And just do that. And then it won't bother you because it's your object of meditation. So I thought that was rather challenging and a little bit brave, but that's what he told her to do. He said, you've got a ready-made object of meditation. It's ready. It's there. It's, a lot of people have to work hard to get an object of meditation, but there it is. It's just automatic for you. I can say, both of these techniques hinge on the person being willing to let go of the story that they're telling themselves about the recurring thought. Because sometimes we tell ourselves, well, I'm a failure because I have recurring thoughts, or I'm a failure because I got this song stuck in my head. And so we're telling ourselves a secondary story about what we think is happening. And I think both of these techniques deal with letting go of that story. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Finding a way to let go of that story that, like, I'm a failure because I have this. Does that make sense? I don't know. How does this work with your thoughts about this, Jeff? How does this feel as a?
So it sort of feels okay for, let's call it the level 1 persistent thought. But then there'll be like a level 2 persistent thought where, okay, let's say I'm worried about my mother.
Okay.
And because, sometimes I worry about her. And that's a little harder to shake. I've sort of tried the just not focusing on it as being a recurrent thought technique, but then sometimes something comes up and there'll be something and I'm worried about my mother, and and that's really kind of hard to let go.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't.
Oh, God. Mm-hmm.
And okay, so like one of the things that I've done, and I don't know if this is legal, is like I'll do a mini Tonglen on the thought to just say, and that'll kind of release the pressure, and then I can carry on.
Yeah, sure.
So it's more these sort of like level 2 nagging thoughts that I have a hard time shaking.
And I think that's probably a good thing for you to do in terms of what we tell other people to do. I think that when people are new to meditation, asking them to learn a second type of meditation in order to handle a persistent thought is probably not smart. but it is okay to do it as long as you don't do it impulsively. Rinpoche said a lot of the trouble that happens with us is because we get a little, he didn't use the word antsy, but that's kind of what it is. Like we get antsy and uncertain, and we think, oh, well, I have to do this now. And, oh, I have to do this now. And, oh, I have to do this now. And, oh, I have to do this now. And he said that sometimes people will switch objects of attention repeatedly in a meditation session, and it actually makes things worse. Because, oh, now I have to do Tonglen. Oh, now I have to like watch my breath. Oh, now I have to do a mantra. And he said people should do everything to ground themselves and not to keep being, spacey and that kind of thing. So I think it's fine for you to pause in that moment and do Tonglen in that moment. But I have another suggestion you might try.
Sure.
Khenpo Rinpoche said that a lot of, remember he was saying part of you wants the distraction and part of you doesn't want the distraction. Well, there's the part that knows, hey, I'm meditating, so, and then the worry factor, like, well, if I don't worry about her now, how will I solve her problems? How will I manage to solve her problems if I don't worry about her while I'm meditating? It's like, that's really kind of what's going on. So the part of you that wants that distraction of worrying about her then can be pacified, according to Rinpoche's advice. He said, by saying to that thought, I will remember this when I am done meditating, and I will come back to this thought when I am done. And he also did this for creative people who would say to him, hey, I get ideas for songs while I'm meditating, or I get ideas for paintings or poems or stories. I get ideas for my art while I'm meditating, and I don't want to stop meditating to scribble them down. Should I or shouldn't I? And he said, definitely don't stop and scribble it down. That's just like solidifying it and making it feel like it's functional to continuously interrupt your meditation. You're devaluing your meditation by doing this. He said, so try this instead. He said, when you have something that you think is important, that you want to think about later, he said, actually make a little aspiration on the spot and say, this is important. May I remember this when the meditation session is done? And then I'd set aside time at the end of the meditation session just to worry. And then you will have done justice to it, because you will have taken time at the very end to worry about her. Because like, okay, I've done some worrying now. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I kind of wondered about that too, because another technique I've used is the file it for later technique. But I felt like I wasn't quite legitimate, because instead of just letting it go, I was actually sort of thinking about it for a second and then saying, okay, that's worthwhile. I'll put that in, put that in another file and go back to meditation.
Yeah, and that's fine, because that's essentially what he's suggesting. He's suggesting that if something is really bothering you and you're really concerned about, you don't want to forget it. He said, stop and make a mental aspiration. I will remember this at the end of the session. And that's the file it for later. It's exactly the same, just different words.
Yeah. I was just rephrasing what I heard you say in my own language. That's all.
Got it. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I think this is good, because one of the things that Rinpoche wanted to do was he wanted people to feel comfortable with the learning of meditation. He wanted people to feel comfortable, and he didn't want them to feel like they were in jail, And so by letting people make a mental note, he's not telling people, well, just forget about it. He wasn't being hard-nosed about it. He was saying, well, yeah, of course, you've got concerns, and those concerns are legit. So just make a mental aspiration that you'll remember them later, and you're doing justice to them. I added the idea of just spending some time reflecting on worry at the end of your session. I made that up, but you could do that too. But I think it's probably better just to file it away, to be honest, because it's less disruptive. But if you do Tonglen at the end of your session, if you do Tonglen at the end of every session, which I don't teach beginners to do that because it's too much stuff. But since you're already an established meditator, doing a little Tonglen at the end is a good way to take care of that, because now you can actually channel the concern and worry into something constructive, where you're sending goodness on the out breath and removing suffering on the in breath. I like that.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
Yeah. Oops. Okay. And yeah, I appreciate that, Jeff.
I got a question.
Yeah. Yes, Steve.
Well, could you say maybe a little bit more if it comes up where someone thinks or somehow about whether this is some kind of intrusive hallucination or delusion or whatever words you want to say there?
I think I understand your question. So let me see if I can repeat it back to you. Your question is, what do you do if a person in your meditation class appears to be having hallucinations or mental illness thoughts? What do you do as a teacher, right?
Right, pretty much. How would you know? I mean, you is it from just observing them or listening to what they say, or do they sometimes say, "Well, I wonder if this is what I'm having," or something?
I think it's a little combo of everything. If I look back at the past and what people have brought to me, I do have people who from the first moment we meet, they say, "Hi, I have a schizophrenia diagnosis. I have problems with having hallucinations while I meditate." And I spoke to my own psychotherapist about this. And she felt that it was better for that person, for the person who is experiencing that, not to do quiet sitting meditation, because it just was like a canvas, an open canvas for the hallucinations. But that was just based on her professional opinion. She was not a meditator. So I couldn't say that from an experienced meditator's point of view, they shouldn't do it. She was just looking at it as a mental health professional, saying, it might not be the best thing for them. And so I asked Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche one time what a person should do. And he said, medicine Buddha practice, recitation of mantra would be a good replacement for shamatha meditation for a person with a mental health diagnosis that caused them to have hallucinations and so forth when they meditate. Just reciting mantra instead. So I don't know if that is answering your question or not.
Oh, I guess so. Yeah, it just popped up. I'd never thought about it before, and I was trying to not panic if something comes up. Do I say something to this person in front of other people, or maybe afterwards?
I see. Yeah. I would say let's talk about this after the class.
Yeah.
I'd say
All right,
just
thanks.
say to them, hey, that's interesting. Let's talk about it after class. And because that way you don't have to like dive into it.
Yeah, right.
Does that make sense? Yeah, because that way the person knows that you care, because you say, well, that's really interesting. I'd like to talk more about that. Let's meet after class and talk about that, because I've got some thoughts about it, and we'll see if we can come up with a strategy. And then sometimes I will say to people,
Right.
I will actually say to people, do you have a mental health diagnosis? I may actually ask that. I said, this may be an inappropriate question, but do you have one? And if they say they do, I said, well, have you spoken to your counselor or therapist about a meditation and what kind of meditation they feel would be the best for you? And if they say no, I say, well, this would be a great time to bring it up. In the meantime, one of the things you can do in the meantime would be to recite mantra like Om Mani Padme Hum, or something, something simplified as a method of meditation until you get a chance to check in on it. But we're here for you, and we can teach you that as well. So I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, one other question, if I could, real quick.
Yeah. Mhm.
On the song, in that the Rinpoche Minya, however you say his name, said an object of meditation. So instead of the breath, it's like a mantra that you keep going back to. Is that what he's saying?
Yeah, he's basically, his name is Mingyur Rinpoche. I just typed it in chat so you can see how it's spelled. And he said that you can use your awareness of the sound of the song as your object,
Mhm.
maintaining an awareness of the sound, not putting any emotional content into the.
Oh yeah, I
into-
know. Yeah, on the counting, if I could, you said 7. So I was thinking people sometimes count all the way through their meditation period to try to do that. And I never wanted to do that, but they just count to 7 and then they just go leave counting alone for the rest of the period.
I have some people who do that, yes. But yeah, I tell people use counting as long as you need to. If you want to count the whole session, count the whole session.
Okay.
But if counting makes you crazy and you don't like it, then you can do it for a while and then let it sit aside and see. Because the counting is like a prop. It props up your attention. It's like propping up your attention. It's like something that it's artificial, but it helps you stay attentive. But if it ceases to be that, and if it is counterproductive, well, then you got to set it aside. But it takes time to
Okay.
to learn all those variations and details.
It seems like it's, for my little simple mind, it seems like trying to remember to label that's thought or thinking, and also to count and do, it's just,
It's a lot.
not for me.
Yeah, no, it's a lot. It's a lot. Yeah. Well, if it's okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to Patricia's questions here, and then that will close out our session for today. I think, Patricia, your questions were about how a person progresses and the difference between letting thoughts flow and following thoughts, because there is a definite difference. We don't teach beginning meditators to follow their thoughts. It's just really a bad idea, because they will then persist in daydreaming and so forth, and they think they're meditating when really they're just letting their minds, fountain off stuff as usual. And this is the tricky part for us. And whereas the practice that you learned for going to sleep of letting thoughts go is a different practice entirely than following your thoughts. And Khenpo Rinpoche, he differentiated this way. He said, when you are following your thoughts, you are completely involved in the story that they are telling you. You're happy with happy thoughts, you're sad with sad thoughts, you're angry with angry thoughts, and you're just being, carried along by all these thoughts. Whereas, he said, if you are merely observing the flow of thought and not being involved in the stories that they are telling you, that's different. It's like you're watching leaves go by on a stream. You're not trying to hop on each leaf and start waving at people. You're just letting them go by. And that's it's a different touch. It's a different feeling if you're just watching them flow and knowing that their basic interior nature is wisdom. It's not that the content is wisdom, but that they're just the flow of mind's awareness. I think, did that describe what you're talking about?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And so that is how you differentiate between following thoughts and letting thoughts flow. Because when you're letting them flow, you're not involved in the story. But if you find yourself getting excited by happy thoughts and sad by other thoughts, then you're investing in the thoughts, and it's really no different than a non-meditating state. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Total sense.
Yeah. Trungpa
Yes,
Rinpoche
thank
talks. Yeah, Trungpa Rinpoche talks about this in one of his books, but I can't remember which one.
Mm-hmm.
So you were classifying this as laziness. How do you feel about it at this point?
Yeah, I can see that difference of just watching your thoughts. I guess I feel like I'm not resting my mind, or I guess I feel like maybe if I just let my thoughts flow and watch them, even though I'm not really getting involved in them, I'm not really resting my mind. I'm still like doing that. I've still got that monkey in, in the background, thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's what I sort of label laziness, is that I allow that to happen rather than being in tranquility.
I think that's possible. I can't say it with certainty, but I do think it is possible that it is just allowing mind to be in its mundane way, but I can't say it with absolute certainty based on your description. It's possible. It's possible, but I think the main thing is that if you're following thoughts but not involved in the content, that's really the piece. Like, for example, let me use another example. Mingyur Rinpoche, at one point, I don't know if he's doing it now, but Mingyur Rinpoche at one point encouraged his students to meditate to music, but he told them they couldn't listen to the music and critique it or get involved emotionally in it, just be aware of the sound itself. And this would be the same with thoughts. You would not get involved in any of the thoughts, but be aware of the flow, and that be it. And I don't know if a person can do that. It's really hard, I think.
Yeah.
So I apologize for not being able to tell you about whether that is an incorrect technique or not. It feels a little incorrect, and it feels like it might be better to return to the breath, but you could also just return to the flow of thoughts if you find yourself carried away by a thought.
Yeah. I guess I think that I'm enjoying it. If I were sitting on a stream and watching the leaves go by in a stream, I guess that is sort of attaching. I don't know. I guess I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. And it's maybe a way to avoid no thought. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yes. So it
I guess
is
that's where the laziness thing comes from. A way to avoid no thought.
Yeah, I'd say you could continue doing it at bedtime if that's helpful, but I would try to do something more conventional on the cushion. How's that? How is that for you? If to do something more conventional like breath awareness on the cushion?
Yeah, that's what I do. Yeah, that's what I do on the, well, yeah, it's the thoughts are, when I watch the flow of thoughts, I'm doing that on the cushion. At bedtime, what I do is I take this tool of letting thoughts go when I start ruminating about my worries and my, what I have to do tomorrow, and do, all that stuff that you do also in meditation, but also I do it in bed at night. And I thought, well, why not take that tool of like letting that thought float away and returning to my breath to help me sleep?
Oh yeah, that's fine. Yeah,
Okay.
I see no problem there. I didn't understand how you were practicing it, but you're returning to the breath, and that's fine. And so if you're returning to the breath, even when you're meditating and not following the flow of thoughts, then you're fine. But if thoughts arise and you briefly follow them, but then you return to the breath, that's okay. That's not following the flow of thoughts. That's returning to the breath, right?
Sure, right. But I I have gone like a couple days where on the cushion during my meditation, I'd watch my thoughts rather than do tranquility meditation, which is no thought. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
I have some concern about it. I'd have to ask Lama Karma to be sure, but
I
I
mean,
have
I'm not really doing it on purpose. I probably am on a subconscious level.
it's possible, yes.
Yeah.
It's possible,
So
yes.
I'm not doing it consciously. I'm not trying
Yeah.
to do it.
Yeah.
But it's what happens.
When we look at the I'm trying to remember the names of it, the five faults and the 8 remedies, or maybe I forget. Anyway, there are certain faults and remedies that are enumerated in the teachings of the Buddha regarding shamatha. One of them is non-application. One of the faults is non-application of the technique of returning to the breath. And so by non-application of the technique, then the thoughts just sort of run wild, you know. And then there's also over application of the technique, which is when you just kind of like jump on every thought, and then you get mad at your thoughts and you jump on them, and then you squeeze them, and then you're angry with them, and then that's also wrong.
Right.
You know, so when you get down into the sort of the detail of learning about the faults and remedies in shamatha, which is way down the line from the introductory practice that we're talking about here.
Sure. Right.
So that's a little bit there's a lot more that you can do in terms of that. Now, in terms of the we're running after 3 o'clock here, so I'm just going to address your other two questions, and then we'll have to pick up with this next time.
Thank you, Lama Kathy.
Yeah, but I'll address the other 2 questions now. How it changes, how meditation changes, and how it progresses. I think it's fair at the end of talking about meditation. I think it's fair to let people know that you will have good days in meditation, and you will have bad days in meditation. You'll have days when it's easy to practice meditation, and you'll have days when it's difficult to practice meditation. And it's been said that the reason for this is that our body and mind are different, literally different from moment to moment. One of my teachers said, our mistake in judging our meditation is that we think our meditation is going to be one continuous upward improvement, when really, he said, it's more like the stock market. It's up one day and down the next, and up one day and then down the next 2. He said, but the general trend is improvement. The general trend is improvement, but we should not become discouraged when we have a day where it's harder. And so I think that that's worth noting. Khenpo Rinpoche said, you will not notice the difference from day to day, but you will notice the difference over a period of time. He said, when you look back at your meditation, don't judge today's versus yesterday's. He said, look back a month and see where you were a month ago, or 2 months ago, or 3 months ago, or from when you started, and you'll see a definite improvement. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Does that speak to your question, or is there more in your question that I'm missing? Like how it changes and how you progress. Did that help? Or did I not quite get there? Still thinking?
Who asked the question, Kathy?
I believe it was your question,
still-
Patricia.
Oh, you think it's me? Oh, you're waiting for me.
Yes.
No,
Yeah,
not question.
because you said that your question is how meditation changes over time and how it progresses. Did I address that question, or is there
Yes.
a piece of it that's missing?
No, you have addressed it. Thank you.
Okay, Then I'm going to share one more thing so we can put this on the recording for folks. Yeah, no, thank you. I'm glad. Yeah, that's okay. This happens sometimes. You know, I don't quite understand a question, and you know, then it's like, how do I address it? So, but thank you. You're a good sport. I appreciate that. I may have covered this previously, but if I didn't, oops, let's see if I can get to the, that's still not it. There it is. Okay. This is from Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche's book, Dharma Paths. A friend of mine put little handy dandy pictures, which I think is cute. He said there are 4 stages of Sheena or Shamatha. The first is the waterfall. He said the first stage of meditation is waterfall. There's a tremendous activity going on in the mind, like water constantly pouring down a waterfall. Don't feel discouraged or disappointed. Realizing that you have to work, continue to practice. Without becoming annoyed or disappointed at the number of distractions, you should resolve to continue the meditation practice. Neither encourage the thoughts nor try to suppress them, but simply work on coming back to the breath over and over again. So when people come and they say, well, I have lots of thoughts, I always say, fantastic. You have now arrived at the first stage of shamatha. Good for you. Okay. Then we go to the second stage, which is the meandering river in a valley. He says sometimes the valley is wide and the ground is level, so the water runs smoothly. Sometimes there's a turn or the ground is uneven, so there's play and activity in the water. While thoughts are still arising and you still encounter distractions, they are not as frequent as at the beginning and not as gross or powerful. You are not so shaken by the distractions, but are able to come back to the breath quite easily. Sometimes you are able to follow the breath for some moments without any distractions. Again, you are able to come back to a stretch of calm and tranquil mind, staying focused on the technique of following the breath. So that's the second stage, where you're still having thoughts, but they're not as fast and they're not as distracting. The third stage, ocean with waves. While most of the time the ocean is tranquil, once in a while a large wave rises and then settles back into the ocean. For a time, the ocean takes a rest. After a while, another wave arises and again it goes back into the tranquil ocean. You're able to maintain the awareness of following the breath most of the time, but once in a while there's some distractions. At this point, there is not so much shakiness or uncertainty in your meditation practice. You begin to feel a sense of confidence and trust in yourself and in the practice. And then finally, the windless, waveless ocean, the fourth stage of meditation. As you continue to practice, the basic Sheena or Shamatha meditation finally becomes stabilized, which is likened to a windless, waveless ocean. No matter how long you meditate, you can sit without distraction. There may still come subtle thoughts, but they don't take you away from following the breath. To reach this level requires consistent and diligent practice over a long period of time, going through the various stages. So I hope that's useful.
Yes.
And this gives us an idea of where we are. Khenpo Rinpoche said that when you start meditating, he said there are 2 types of meditators when people are just learning. One type of meditator, when they first sit down to practice, their mind is very agitated and is all over the place. But the longer they sit, the more it calms down. And he said that person needs to sit for a longer period of time. So they get there, to the easier part. But then he said the second kind of meditator, when they first sit down, everything is easy, everything is smooth, but the longer they sit, the worse it gets. He said that kind of person has to sit more than once and more frequently for short periods of time. He said you have to kind of think about which of these 2 you are. And yes, some people vary, they'll go between one and the other. But he said this will help you determine how long to meditate. Because if when you first sit down, everything's great, but the longer you sit, the worse it gets, It's important for you to notice that things are getting worse and then to end your meditation, dedicate your merit, and then rest your mind. Whereas if you're the person who is all over the place at first, but then gets better and better and better, it's better to give yourself the time it needs to get there. So does that help?
Yeah. That's great. Yeah.
So that's a little bit about how it progresses and how it changes, and how it's up and down some days, but we just persist because we know that it's improving.
Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, that's all for today. I will send you a copy of have I sent you the 4 little drawings of the ocean and stuff? Okay, I'll send you those today. And I will also send the guidelines for meditation, the brief a document from Rinpoche, and I'll also send the slide presentation that we just reviewed. Okay. And then after everybody's had a chance to see the video and so forth, we'll circle back and see what you'd like to do next, if you'd like to learn more, or if this is enough for now, or how you'd like to proceed. I'm super happy that we've talked about this and that we've had these meetings, and so thank you.
Me too. It's been very, very valuable. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I've really appreciated the chance to talk about these things.
Oh, great. And I see Michael is sharing, this has been informative and clarifying. Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, thank you. And thanks again. And thank you, Steve, for being here even after your surgery. Like, you go, guy, get better, baby.
Thank you.
When you write that article about the stupa, will we be able to read it?
If you subscribe to the Columbus KTC newsletter, yes. If you don't, no. But if you do, yes. I'm going to try to also put it on as a blog post on our website. And Chuck Drake, who went to Canada for this, he wanted to write his own version of the story, and I can't wait to read it, because it was a comedy of errors. Everything went wrong. It just, when they first got the truck broke down. And all kinds of stuff went totally crazy, but he said he took it to be a lot of karmic purification. So. Okay. Let's dedicate the merit of our session today to all sentient beings. Make the aspiration that all beings are free from suffering, come to happiness, and then to Buddhahood. I'll recite this short prayer. Through this merit, may all achieve the omniscience of Buddhahood. May it defeat our common enemy, wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may we free all beings. May we free all beings. May we free all beings. Okay, everybody. Thank you so much. Yay. And we'll be talking again soon.